I was lost in a pretty dream, and I was at home again beside the stream.
Welcome back to the shop, friends. Today is the final episode in the series on how to dimension a board with only hand tools, and today I'm going to show you how I cross-cut the board to length. So I actually got started without you, and I went ahead and cross-cut one of the two ends of the board. So let's take a look and see how we did. I'm fairly happy with that. I'm probably a 1/16 of an inch off at the bottom, and typically that's where the blade begins to waver a little bit. I'm really good at the top here, right at 90 degrees. I'm really happy with how straight the cut was from side to side there. I got almost a perfect 90-degree angle from our reference edge. Okay, I've got our board spun around here on the workbench, and I'm going to go ahead and measure it to final length. I've determined that 34 inches is going to be the final length of this particular board. Be sure when you're measuring your boards to final length for a project, you're using the same tape measure or measuring device. The last thing you want to do is use two different tape measures or other measuring methods and then have varying lengths of your boards. I try to keep this one on the workbench, that way I use it each time that I'm measuring longer distances for each project. So once I have determined my final length, I'll take my marking knife, which I've freshly sharpened, and I'll make a small nick right at 34 inches. You can see the small nick here, and this is the reference edge and this is the reference face. Every measurement for now on in this project will be taken from the reference edge and the reference face, the corner here. The next step is to take our 90-degree angle and line it up along the reference edge of the board, and then mark with our marking knife our cross cut. One thing you can do to assure you're getting a perfect cross cut at your mark is to put your knife in the mark and then line up your angle up against your marking knife and then make a very superficial cut. Each time you cut the wood, cut a little bit deeper. We are scoring the wood to prevent tear out when we begin to make our cut. You can see here we have a mark with our marking knife all the way across the board at a perfectly 90-degree angle to the reference edge of the board. Place your reference square on your reference face, place your knife in your marking line, butt the two together, and then make a superficial cut. This should be perfectly 90 degrees to your reference edge and reference face corner. Each time you mark, make the knife cut slightly deeper. We will go ahead and do the same thing for the opposite side. Again, you're placing your square along your reference face. Place the square along your reference face, butt it up against your knife, which is placed in the knife kerf, and then make your mark. Each time making the mark slightly deeper. Now that we have established our final length and we have a knife mark along the reference face, the reference edge, and then the parallel surface to the reference edge, now we're going to use our chisel and we're going to create a knife wall along each line. This is not my method, this is Paul Seller's method, and he should certainly receive credit for that. I'm not sure if he developed it or if he is the one who has made it most popular, but it certainly works really well. So I'm going to take my 3/4 chisel and I'm going to make a small cut along the knife line all the way down the board. I'm probably removing material about 1/8 of an inch from the marking line that we created. Be sure as you're chiseling, you're not chiseling past the marking line. We don't want to tear out the fibers on the other side of the board. We will go ahead and do the same thing along the two edges of the board as well. Once I have chiseled along the line, along the 3 sides of the board, I like to come back with my marking knife and then cut the chips away. And then you can usually just take your finger and pop the chips away. As I cut away the chips, I'm being cautious not to cut on the finished board surface and staying inside the kerf that I've created. Then I come back and I just begin to clean that up a little bit. I begin to chip away the remaining wood up against the knife wall that we have created with our marking knife. It also works well to place your chisel edge in the kerf that we have created and removing the remaining material. Okay, I've got that cleaned up really well with the chisel. You can see that I've got a nice knife wall created along the board, along the reference face, the reference edge here, and then the parallel surface to the reference edge as well. The next thing I like to do is I like to make each corner a little bit deeper. It makes it a little bit easier for me to start the saw. So I use the chisel and I just work down the corner up to the knife wall to make it a little bit deeper. It seems to help me get the saw started straight and square. So what I like to do is I like to start with the corners. I like to get a nice square cut started in each corner, and that helps me to keep the blade aligned throughout the entire cut. Using an American style saw, what I generally would do is put the saw in the corner in the curve for the knife wall that we've created and make a few back cuts. And this helps to establish a curve for the saw to ride in. Right in the corner that we created. And then making very, very small cuts, I begin to create the cut. I'm paying special attention as I cut to assure that I'm riding along the knife wall on the reference face and also the edge as well. It's really important at this stage not to get in a hurry because these corners are key to keeping your knife blade square. I'm constantly checking as I create the kerf to assure that I am square. And then I gradually begin to make larger strokes, assuring that I'm following the knife walls. can see as I'm creating the cut, I'm using my index finger to support the saw blade to prevent it from coursing side to side. Be very careful at this stage not to hit your finger with the saw teeth. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the other corner. Again, using my index finger to guide the saw blade against the knife wall as I'm starting the cut. I'm paying close attention that I'm up against the knife wall on each side of the corner. Once I have each corner created, then I begin elongating the strokes of the saw a little bit in an effort to connect the two corners. Don't get in a hurry at this stage, just take it nice and slow. At this stage, I'm still using my fingers to support the saw blade to prevent it from wavering side to side. And I'm slowly increasing the length of the strokes. It's important not to force the saw. Let the saw do the work. You'll be able to hear and feel it if it's running smooth. If you're pushing too hard, you'll feel it, the saw trying to chatter. The saw has a distinctive sound whenever it's going the correct speed and you're not forcing it. I'm still supporting the saw with my fingers to keep it from moving side to side. I'm slowly increasing the angle along the reference edge. Be very careful not to get your finger at this stage because it's quite easy to do with the saw teeth. As you're working your way down the edge, be sure that you're following the saw line along the reference face as well. As we establish the saw kerf along the three edges of the board, we can be a little bit more aggressive with the cut.
And you walked past me, and you saw me smile. first time. When I saw you, I thought I lost my mind. You then faded and gone away and left behind. I hope you'll be around, even if I play. You are like a summer breeze.
If you find that your saw blade is starting to waver a little bit onto the knife wall, what you can do is you can take your finger and you can push the blade a little bit to guide it back into place. You need to be very careful not to get your finger against the saw tooth. I told you not to do it, and I actually just did it. It's not a deep cut, but it's just a scratch that was bleeding a little bit. But if you take your finger and you press the saw over just a little bit, it helps to re-guide the blade into your kerf line. Okay, now that we've got our kerf well established on all three sides of the board, we can go ahead and work our way through the cut. Okay, there it is. That's the first attempt we've made at cross-cutting this large board. You can actually see the lamination was better than I originally had thought. There's a little bit on the edge that didn't glue up as well, but the middle is glued up really nicely. This is the first time I've laminated a board using only hand tools. Well, the truth is in our reference. Let's check and see how we did. We're lining up our square against the reference face. I can see very little light through the very bottom. Maybe it's a 32nd at most from being perfectly square. Let's check the middle. And it might be a 16th. Be a 32nd to a 16th there as well. That's certainly no problem. That we can clean up with the smoothing plane without any difficulty. Next, let's check and see how we did with the square face. So we're using our square along the reference edge. And I'm really happy with that. I don't think a power tool would do much better than that right there. Now I'm going to check the middle of the board, which is just as good, and also the bottom surface of the board, which we might be off a 32nd in this corner, but again, that's no problem. That will clean up with the smoothing plane. Well friends, this is the last video in the series on how to dimension lumber with hand tools. I'm really happy with the way this piece of stock turned out for our treadle lathe project. We have a perfectly flat face, a perfectly flat edge square to the face, and then we paralleled the two other sides to the face and the edge, and then we squared off both ends of the board. I think this is going to make a really nice piece in the treadle lathe project. I hope you've enjoyed this series. I've certainly enjoyed making it. It makes the work of dimensioning the lumber much more fun to share it with you. If you found that there was something unclear about the process, be sure to let me know in the comments and I'll try to help you through it. I really appreciate you following this series, and as always, give a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks again. Wanted to real quick give a couple channel updates. I've downloaded some new software, so I'm going to be trying some new features to the editing of the videos. You might see some new things. If you look down, you'll see the subscribe button, and you can hit that and subscribe to the channel for future videos. You can also look to the right here, and you can see actually my favorite video. It's the bow saw video that I made, and it was dedicated to a friend of mine who unfortunately has since passed away. He actually gave me the bandsaw that I used for the video. If you look down to the right, you'll see the channel trailer, and it'll give you an introduction to the channel. And also, I haven't forgot about the 100 subscriber giveaway. It'll be on the second video in the Treadle Lathe series, and I'll be announcing the winner of the free t-shirt. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.